Most men are very good at thinking and doing, or perhaps thinking or doing. Very few men are good at feeling. This anxiety is almost universal among men, and it does have to do largely with how can I be who I am and engage the world. If I'm going to deal with women, I have to get fluent with words. If I don't do that, I will not succeed. I will be the perfect husband, but I will not be intimate with that woman.
You are listening to the Akkeri Podcast, a show about men and masculinities, the challenges that modern men face, and how to chart a better way forward. I'm your host, Matt Howlett, mental health coach and founder of the Akkeri. In this episode, I talk with psychologist and author Dr. Ron Johnson. Our conversation centers around several topics from his new book entitled Balls, Men Finding Courage with Words, Women, Work, and Wine. Ron is someone that I've learned a lot from over the years, so I hope this conversation and his work will be valuable to you as well. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. What got you into psychology? What got you into men's work? Just basically as a bit of an introduction.
So what got me into seeing men was this. I started practice 55 years ago, and most of the people I was seeing at the time were women, and most of those women were talking about the men in their lives, usually complaining. And so I sort of agreed with them. Yes, this guy's, irresponsible or whatever he is. And then I thought I ought to meet these guys. So I started to meet these guys, and the guys that I met were not the guys that I'd been hearing about. Right. So it's like, wait a minute, Joe seems like a pretty good fellow, seems intelligent. Yeah, he drinks a little bit, but he's not alcoholic. And so that moved me away from seeing women and towards seeing men. But you have to know this was in the early 70s and then 80s. Mm-hmm. And so I started seeing men. I put a Yellow Pages ad when we had Yellow Pages. Ron Johnson, psychologist, practice limited to men. Now, this is like 1975 or 76. So what did that mean to the community? That meant I was gay. Really?
Wow.
Are you kidding me? So I thought that was really very interesting. Why would you think I'm gay if I would say practice limited to children? Am I a pedophile? Or this was really early. About the same time, there was a fledgling men's movement that followed the feminist movement. That attracted some men, but not very many, frankly. It was, men's retreats where they would do drumming and a variety of other kinds of things, and which was fine, but it really didn't treat the man in the street. So what I did early in my life and continue to do is try to understand, what does it mean to be a man? What is this masculinity thing? What is cultural? What is psychological? What might even be spiritual?
Right.
And so my interest has continued in that vein. That's not all I do, but that remains a very important factor. So that's how I got into it, and that's how I've stayed with it.
Right. So the main point of the conversation that I wanted to get into, obviously, is the book that you are finished now and releasing soon, entitled Balls. Can you give me an idea of what kind of spurred the writing of that book from that beginning? Because obviously you started working with men in the 70s. You're releasing Balls now, and you've written books over the past several years. But correct me if I'm wrong, nothing has come out just yet that you've written that is basically what Balls is all about.
No, we have not. Let me just speak about the outrageous title. Why would anybody dare to say this? This just seems crude. But Balls, as I conceive of it, is a man being honest with himself and then honest with other people. The difficulties that men have, I refer to with alliteration. They are anger, they are avoidance, they are addiction. Anger, avoidance, and addiction. So a man will get angry too easily, or he will avoid having conversations, or he will find some go-to, which is an addiction. All of that underlines what I've come to see as the basic anxiety that most men have, which is essentially, who am I? What am I? Why am I going to do this? And how am I going to face the responsibilities of life? That's been my orientation and developing over a number of years. In fact, I must say, even recently, in the recent years, I have seen that this anxiety is almost universal among men. And it does have to do largely with how can I be who I am and engage the world? If I'm just who I am, then I'm narcissistic. If I'm just engaging the world, then I'm going to placate the world or avoid the world. But how can I find this interface between who I am and what the world is? Now, the world for me, of course, is the Western world primarily. It might be very much different in Africa or Latin America.
Different context, sure.
Sure, it could be. So the problems that I saw with men continue to be the problems that I see with men. Very often, in fact, I'm reminded of a man that I saw recently, and I said, well, men have these 4 problems. And he said, I got all of them. So very often men will look at that. But this is very important here because I don't look for what's wrong with people.
Right.
I look for what's right with people. And yes, a man might have a diagnosis of bipolar disorder or whatever, but that's not what a man really is. And that's what psychology, unfortunately, having been adapted to psychiatry, is now about, diagnosing somebody. I don't do that. I do it for insurance purposes or if necessary, but that's not how I look at people. That's not how I look at men. And so, for instance, I used to have women, and still occasionally women come in and say, well, my husband is ADD and he's depressed and he's anxious and, he's this and he's that, all kinds of, maybe he's bipolar disorder. And I think, okay, maybe. And I think, no, this guy is trying to find out who he is. He doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know how to put who he is into words. And that's one of the subtitles of this book, Men Dealing with Words. Well, when we look at words, men can be very good at words, but not very good at feeling-based words, particularly emotional words. That's the dominant anger that men have because they're good at being happy and they're good at being angry, but they're dreadful at being afraid, which is very, very important. And they're really awful at being sad.
Mm-hmm.
Sadness is, without a doubt, the most important emotion that we have. And to teach men how to be sad, to help them how to be sad, is a very challenging activity. What I frequently find is this: you can't feel sad and anxious at the same time. Mm-hmm. And men are so familiar with feeling this inner anxiety, fear, that when they begin to feel sad, they might start to cry in my office. Their anxiety disappears. That is a remarkable phenomenon that happens, I don't think, universally with men, with women as well. So what I'm trying to do is help men grasp the centrality of sadness and the danger of fear. If I'm afraid, I, as a man, will probably go to avoidance or addiction or anger. But if I can just allow myself to be afraid, to be anxious, and then look at what is this about? This anxiety is about, I am afraid I'm going to lose something. So I call that anticipatory loss. If I look at, I might lose something, which is really very interesting. If I talk to a man, what would it be like if you lost your wife or your job or your child? And that man can be in front of me and actually feeling sorrow. And this is anticipatory sorrow. Well, why does he feel anticipatory sadness? Because he loves his job, his wife, his children, his house. And so to teach a man that sadness is central in life is not to say this is depression or despairing. To teach a man sadness is central is whatever you love, person, place, thing, idea, you most certainly will lose it. You might have it for minutes, you might have it for decades, but you will lose it.
If I could just jump in for a second, you mentioned that you've seen anxiety as like the biggest challenge, or just
huge challenge.
Okay. So if that's the biggest challenge, is finding and putting words to those feelings the main solution for that?
The main solution for that is to feel sad. That doesn't seem to make any sense when I first say that to men.
Right.
But if you look at anxiety, what is anxiety? I am afraid that I'm going to lose something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what does that mean? That means I love this something. Again, it could be person, place, thing, or idea. I'm afraid I'm going to lose this thing that I love. So anxiety is a love problem. I love something that I might lose. And if I can help you realize you love your child, you really love your child. And if I lost my child, I would be overwhelmed with sorrow. And what I try to do with men then is say, let's just go there. No, I don't want to go there. I can't even think about that. No, of course you can't go there. Of course you don't want to think. You don't want to think about losing a child or losing a house or something. When men get familiar with that, then they realize, oh, I will lose whatever I have. I will die. I will lose this idea. This idea won't work out. This job won't work out perfectly. And then I'm no longer afraid because what has happened? I have instilled hope inside of me. Now, isn't that odd? Hope is not, I will get what I want. Hope is I will be able to cope with what I will have in the future. I will have something. I will enjoy it. I will lose this something. I will be sad.
Right. So obviously, though, you mentioned in the book that there's a lot of work that needs to be done between the anxiety and getting to that place that you've just described, where you can put words to it, where you can feel it, where you can move through it. What do you see as the biggest challenge to getting to that point? Because, like, personally for me, and obviously you're my psychologist, we've worked through this over the years. One of my biggest challenges was seeing the importance of this type of work, because it wasn't just that I didn't want to do it at first, or that I felt like I didn't need it, but I don't think I valued it. And that is common. I see that in a lot of guys that I speak with. It's almost like they kind of side-handed give this value. It's like, oh yes, that's important, but maybe I don't need it. I don't need it right now. And then when we go through big challenges in life and feel a lot of undesirable feelings, that's when we wonder maybe if this is the time to do this type of work. What is the work in between? How do you get to that place where you're able to start looking at learning the words for this, feeling these things and finding them?
A couple of things. Words are very important. There are three elements in life, roughly. They are thinking, feeling, and doing. Most men are very good at thinking and doing, or perhaps thinking or doing. Very few men are good at feeling. A lot of people are very good at feeling, but they don't do anything or they don't think clearly. So they're great with feelings, but they never achieve anything.
Right.
So it's not like feeling is more important. But what I find with men is this. I will see Buddy, and Buddy is, let's say, 40 years old, but he's very bright. So he's sort of intellectually 60. Furthermore, he's achieved a lot. I see somebody who is just short of 40 and he's a millionaire and has done very well. What about the feeling part? The feeling part of Buddy is 12. So this Buddy is 40 years old physically, 50 or 60 years old intellectually and achievement-wise, and a 12-year-old emotionally. So what happens with this 12-year-old? Every once in a while, this 12-year-old starts screaming at him, and I want my way. I don't know how to do this. I don't like this woman that I'm with. I don't like this job, and so I'm just going to quit. Or whatever I'm going to do. So in a nutshell, it's helping men mature in how they feel, what they feel, valuing how they feel, and cautiously and carefully and selectively expressing how they feel.
Right. I wonder if there is a way to speed up the maybe education process to help them understand the value of this type of work. Because it feels like you have to go through something incredibly difficult before you're able to. Right.
Yeah. Well, let's say if you're 40 years old and you're a millionaire and you're a person of good character and you don't have a grasp of feelings, that means you have to feel like a 12-year-old or maybe a 6-year-old.
Right.
Who wants to feel like that? No, I don't want to feel like a 6-year-old. I want to feel like the person I am. I've achieved this. I've made money. I have people like me. I'm doing well. And if I'm going to feel like a 12-year-old or a 6-year-old, I'm going to feel pretty inferior. So it's very hard for men. Plus, add to the thing that you asked a moment ago, how do I put that into words? Oh boy,
Right.
that's a real problem. So for instance, I almost universally have men say to me, I don't want to live. And I sometimes have to help them say that because that's how I know. Oh, I don't want to die. Oh, I really don't want to kill myself. I just don't want to live. Why is that? Because life sucks.
Right.
I'm not happy in this marriage. I'm not happy in this job. My kids are alcoholic or whatever. It's something, everything's wrong. I don't want to live. Or very often, as men get older, I have all these physical anomalies and I don't want to live. Now, what man is going to say, I don't want to live to anybody? It's going to sound like I'm suicidal. I have felt I don't want to live. Every man that I see has felt I don't want to live. What's the operative word? Feel. So when I say how I feel, my words are always approximate. And I would go far as to say, when I say how I feel, I do not succeed in that endeavor. I never actually succeed in saying how I feel. Who are the people who are good at putting feelings into words? Poets and musicians.
Sure.
Because we have poetic license, we have musical license, we have artistic license, but we don't have license with words.
So what gives men that license?
Gives men that license. Men have license in expressing their feelings when they swear.
Okay.
Why
that's primarily anger. That's primarily anger,
or it could be joy. I mean, I don't know if I can, abbreviate what I might say here, but I can say she's beautiful or she's effing beautiful.
Right.
What's the difference there?
Okay.
The difference is I put emotion to it. And so men are best when they swear, and it's emotional. It's emotional. Why is the F word so frequent these days? Because it's the emotion that people are putting to it.
Okay, so it's putting your emotions to words, but that's also like a cultural thing as well. Because
that's a cultural thing.
Like to swear, like to use foul language.
Yeah, to swear. I had somebody come to me not long ago. He's a pastor's son, and he said, well, I wasn't sure that I wanted to see you because I know that you were Christian, and because I just, I have some words. And I said, what do you mean, swearing? Well, yeah. I said, well, Jesus swore. Well, what are you talking about? No, he didn't. Yes, he did. He
yes,
swore.
He did.
He did. He called the Pharisees, you painted gravestones, you group of snakes. That's swearing. And I said, you want me to put those into contemporary English?
Exactly.
Hyphenated words? I think you can do that for yourself. But that's not the only way that men express their feelings. Men express their feelings in their thoughts, in their philosophy, and in what they do. So men are much better at expressing their feelings in thinking and particularly in doing. Once in a while, I see tradesmen who are brilliant with their hands. And if I want to know how he feels, I need to watch him move these bricks or swing that hammer or use that saw, and I will see how he feels. And it's all about feeling, but it is not words.
Right.
We did a new kitchen project here, and the guy who did the flooring came in and did wonderfully on the floor. But he came in and he saw the butcher block countertop, and he put his hand on the butcher block countertop and just touched it.
Right.
He was feeling. He's a kinesthetic guy. He was physical. He was feeling. But did he say this is wonderful? No. Did he say this really makes me feel good? No, because he's a typical man. He doesn't know how to put those feelings into words. That's the task. Right. That's the first subtitle of the book, Balls.
Right.
Words.
Words. Yeah. So you mentioned like the central ingredient in life, I'm quoting you now, is to be true to oneself and then to communicate oneself. Having balls means having this kind of courage. So that's honesty.
Yes, that's honesty.
Would you say
that if I'm honest and I feel life sucks and I don't want to live, who am I going to say that to? Who's going to actually hear that?
Right.
Dare I say it? Because it sounds like I don't like my children. It sounds awful. But when I say how I feel, it's always approximate. I can get better and better and better at it. Maybe I'll even write some poetry. Maybe I'll write music. Maybe I'll do something that helps me express feelings.
Right.
And if I do that with another man, and if he's not familiar with feelings, he's going to say, well, I think you ought to just, divorce the woman, or you ought to quit your job, or you should go here and go there. So what's his friend doing? Well, he's being a friend. He wants to help him and fix him.
Right.
He doesn't need to be helped and fixed. He needs to be heard.
Right. He's jumping to doing because he doesn't.
He's jumping to doing.
Right.
Exactly. And doing is fine. If it's just about feelings, it's just psychobabble, and it's not worth your time. You ultimately have to make changes in your life. Maybe you should get divorced. Maybe you should express yourself better so you don't have to get divorced. But it has to start with, you have to put your feelings into words and get better and better at it.
Right. So in my mind, that goes hand in hand with vulnerability. That is kind of what I've been talking about a fair bit, is that men need to understand that vulnerability is not really weakness. It can be a strength.
Yes. Well said. Well said. I agree entirely.
Yeah. So how do we get men to that point, like where they understand the importance of that? It's my experience with older men. I'm, 43. So, men in their 50s, 60s, 70s. My father, when I was growing up, he shut down those conversations. It would, make a joke or change the topic or whatever that would be. But I just find that there's so many challenges to getting men to understand the importance of this. Well, it's frustrating. What is it that you do in your practice that helps men to, even come back to see you? Is it that they begin to see change? Like, is there physiological changes that they experience? What is it that you see that brings men back to this type of work? Not just to you, but to this type of work?
They do become familiar with it, and they become less embarrassed by saying something that's imperfect. I try to help men say, this is how you express your feelings. You say ABC, and then the person that's listening to you doesn't get it, and you say this. You say, I'm sorry, I'm not communicating. You don't say, you're not listening to me. That's not what I said. Don't do that. You don't get angry. You don't avoid. You just say, I'm sorry, I'm not communicating. Let me try again. And they become familiar with the trial and error that's so important in life. And if men can do trial and error with words, then they're moving towards being able to be trial and error with words that reflect feelings. Men are good at trial and error when you learn how to swing a hammer, when you learn how to write an essay, when you think. But trial and error with this whole business of expressing my feelings is painful. So if I'm going to speak my feelings and I feel like and I sound like a 6-year-old instead of a successful 40-year-old, that is difficult. And that's the vulnerability that you're talking about. So right. You get familiar with it. And for instance, how is the expression "my bad"? How did that actually? I know people that are actually offended by that expression, but "my bad" is distinctly a male expression. You hear it on the athletic field. My bad. You hear it in the basketball court. My bad. I try to help men use that expression when they're talking about my bad here. My bad. Let me try this again. Let me try this again. What does it mean to do that? It means I'm building my self-esteem around the words and the emotions that I have. My self-esteem might be very good around what I think and what I do, but if my self-esteem is not developed, if I'm not mature in the emotion, when I start to speak emotion, I'm going to feel childish and I'm going to be embarrassed. So the more I do it, the better I get at it.
Okay, so it's a practice, obviously. It's accepting the fact that you're going to feel a little bit unsure, a little bit of uncertainty, a little bit of discomfort. Can you talk to me more, like the subtitle of Balls is how men find courage with words, women, work, and wine. Obviously, finding courage with women is a big challenge for the majority of men. We would probably say that we just don't always understand them. We think differently. Can you speak a little bit to that, what you've seen specifically in your practice, what you talk about in your book? How is that process different from men finding courage with words?
Yes. Well, of course, a good deal of finding courage with women has to do with words, which means that I need to realize that women and men speak quite differently. It has to do with a brain function. There's an element in the brain called the corpus callosum, which connects the right brain to the left brain. The right brain, loosely speaking, is an emotional part of the brain, and it's probably the part of the brain that we have a sense of self. The left brain is rational, factual, and verbal. Well, we know this for one reason, because if I have a left brain stroke and I can't speak, I will be able to swear. Now, why is that? My former pastor called me up and he said, my mother is in the hospital and she's swearing. She has never sworn in her life. Why is she swearing? And I said, Brian, she's swearing because she is trying to speak and she doesn't have any words. Swearing is not words. Swearing is emotional. It's vocal, but it's not verbal. So if I'm going to get better at this, I have to realize that women are much better at expressing how they feel because, for one thing, they've done it all their life. You and I, as men, went through junior high and high school with competition, which was intellectual or athletic or academic in some way. We didn't go through those years competing with what you wore, how you felt, what girlfriend you had, and the feelings of hurt. You didn't use the word hurt at all. But women have familiarity with emotional words. That's part of it is social. Part of it is neurological. The brain is different. For instance, women can talk and listen at the same time, which we men most certainly can't do. As we speak here, you speak or I speak. And if you interrupt me, I stop and you speak. Women don't do that. Women have this incredible capacity to talk and listen at the same time. We're listening to women talking and nobody's listening to each other. And they could say, yes, we are. We're just talking at the same time. It's much more efficient. So if I'm going to talk to a woman and I say, I want to tell you how I feel. And I say, for instance, I think I want to quit my job. She is most likely going to immediately say, well, you can't do that. That's hurt because we shouldn't do that. How are we going to pay for that? Whoa, whoa.
Right.
Please just listen to me. I feel, that's the word, like I'm going to quit my job. So talking to a woman is so familiar with coming right back with how she feels or what she thinks that makes talking to a woman particularly difficult. If I'm going to deal with women, I have to get fluent with words. I have to get better. There's no way. If I don't do that, I will not succeed. I will be the perfect husband, the perfect father, the perfect worker, but I will not be intimate with that woman.
This is another quote directly from your book. Having balls has to do with being honest, forthright, and clear in his actions, which can only happen when a man is ever deeper in his self-understanding. So it's not just a practice of like extending your vocabulary, learning how to name what it is that you're feeling, but it's also a practice of getting to know yourself. So you go away, you spend time alone, like you're journaling, you're reading, you're crying, you know what I mean? You're experiencing what it is that you're feeling and trying to not just expand your vocabulary, but come to a deeper understanding of yourself. Is that correct?
Exactly. And what are you coming to a deeper understanding? A whole bunch of love. You love people, you love things, you love ideas, you love your work or you want to love your work. And most importantly, intrinsically, you love yourself. Now, a lot of men say, well, I don't love myself. And I say, let me try to correct that. You don't like yourself. You don't like what you're doing. You're overweight or you're not successful at your work or something. But loving yourself is natural. Jesus, when he gave the so-called Great Commandment, he did not say you need to love yourself. He said, you need to love God and others all the way you already love yourself. Loving yourself is natural. It doesn't always look like that. So if I'm expressing my feelings, I'm always expressing what I love, what I have loved, what I hope to love, or what I have lost. When I get familiar with that, then it's like, my words are inaccurate here. But the feelings are not. The feelings are perfect. The feelings are real, and they're always based on love. And that love can be for a person or it can be for an idea. For instance, I love the ideas behind this book, Balls. I love the idea. I really love it. I hope it can be of value to other men. But I'm loving something that's abstract, but it's very important to me. It's not just men are important. What's important is being able to somewhat adequately express that, and then maybe assist men with their understanding themselves. So if I understand myself, I need to understand how I feel and then slowly get better at putting those feelings into words. Yes, it's understanding. Then a beautiful thing happens. If I understand how I feel, I will understand how you feel. And that, of course, is what's really important with women. Women will say, well, you never listen to me. Well, I don't listen to you because I'm hearing feelings from you, and I don't know how to do that. So if I first express my feelings and get better at that, then I can hear your feelings. And then we're ready to rock and roll.
So I guess a major benefit of this type of work is the deepening of not just your relationship with yourself, but your relationship with everybody around you, not just women.
With everybody, women, children, friends, exactly. And of course, work.
Talk to me for a second about practical ways that men can do this. Like personally, I've found conversations with others who value this type of personal development work. I've had a couple friends over the years that have seen the importance of it, but journaling and just being alone, right? Putting my thoughts on paper so that they're more concrete, that I can get specific. And then that really has helped me with that vocabulary, because like I can focus exactly on what it is that I am feeling and kind of figure and filter that out through the writing on paper. And then the process of that, obviously, like it helps to slow things down. But what have you seen has worked?
You speak, Matt, very, very well about that. If I'm journaling, that is functionally poetic. What is the difference between poetry and prose? Emotion. That's the only difference between, and much prose is emotional, but poetry is particularly emotional. So if I'm writing, journaling, this is an emotional time. So that's very important. Secondly, I need to realize and get more fluent at, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing here. I'm really enjoying swinging the hammer. I enjoy reading this book. I enjoy being alone. I enjoy hiking. So if I become more familiar with what I love that I physically do, I can become more familiar with putting this kind of love into words. I very often have to start with men. Well, I just don't know how to put this into words. I said, how about this? How about you go back to your work and just see what you really enjoy? How about you go back to your house and see what you really enjoy? Where's your favorite place? Matt, my favorite place in life is right here in my office, looking out my window. And at this point, looking on a screen, or I could be looking at another patient. This is my favorite place. Now, some people's favorite place is their cabin. Some people's favorite place is somebody's favorite place I talked to yesterday is Yellowstone Park. He's been there 10 times and he can't wait to go back again. That's a love phenomenon. I love Yellowstone Park. I love my office. Somebody else loves the kitchen.
Right. So it'd probably be fair to say that starting with finding and figuring out what it is that you love.
Yes.
Thinking about that.
Yes. Thinking about that. And then adding to that. And then, of course, women are going to be the best people who listen to this. But that's a challenge, because if I'm going to say how I feel and she's going to treat me like another woman, she's going to interrupt me. Well, in her mind, she's not interrupting, she's adding. But I need to say, now, my dear, thank you for trying to help me here, but this is difficult for me. So I need some space here. Well, I'm just trying to help you. And you can say, yes, I know you're trying to help me, but this is actually not helping me. I get confused. I forget my name here when I'm trying to say how I feel. So give me some liberty. And that can be the same with men. If you have one or two men, more than most men have. Most men have none.
Right.
None. They have friends that at work, they have friends that they drink with, they have friends that they go to church with, but they don't have friends with whom they have intimate conversation.
Right. As one of the most common things I've seen with men is that they do things together,
yes,
but they don't talk about things together, at least not to any depth.
We call that triangulation. I have this thing that I do. I'm swinging the hammer, or I'm going to church, or I'm doing a Bible study, or whatever I'm doing.
Right.
And that's how we meet. But we don't just meet eye to eye, face to face. This is who I am. This is what I feel. This is what's valuable. This is what I love.
Right. Something you said a moment ago reminded me of another point that you made in the book. I mean, obviously, there's a time and place for this type of conversation, for this type of practice. Can you speak a little bit to that? Because,
yes,
I mean, some of that's obvious, but some of it not so much.
It's time and place and person. That's why I say you have to know how you feel and selectively express how you feel. That means you don't say how you feel to most people. You say how you feel, see how it goes. If it gets better, you say more how you feel. That hopefully would be a woman or a close man, maybe somebody older, maybe somebody younger, but somebody that has that. So that's a tough one because most people don't know how they feel, and most men don't know how to hear how anybody else feels. So it's going to take some practice to get there.
Trial and error.
Trial and error. And if the error is I feel like a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old, I'm going to be embarrassed.
Right.
You have to work yourself through that. This is painful.
Can you speak just for a few minutes about the benefits that you see to this type of trial and error? Because obviously, like, what is it that's on the other side? What is it that I'm going to get out of this work? It has to be valuable. It has to, work for these guys.
It's meaningful, it's creative, and it's productive. Some people are more creative than they are productive. Some people are more productive than creative. But in the long run, it's not just about me. That's narcissism. It has to start with me. And then when I get solid with this whole feeling thing and I'm comfortable with it and I'm better at it, then I'm serving the world in some way or another. And that's what that's where meaning actually comes into life. This is really important for me now. And so if my self-esteem is wrapped around what I do and what I think, if we add to that, it's also wrapped around what I feel, then I feel more solid with myself and I can begin to forget about myself. Then it's not just about me. It's about what can I do in the world.
So do you find that a lot of men get stuck in it being more about them?
Yes.
That they learn something, from childhood or teenage years that just works like a pattern of being, of living that makes them, successful in the various areas of life that, make them feel like a man, and they just continue in that without looking deep inside themselves. And maybe they find themselves, 40s, 50s, 60s unhappy and looking back on life unsatisfied.
Exactly. If their self-esteem is around what they have done and what they think, both valuable, but not around what they feel, those feelings will generate first to fear, then to anger, then to avoidance, then to addiction in some way or another. So when I see men with one of those 4 difficulties, I realize that the phenomenon here is you don't know how you feel. You don't know how to value how I feel, and you don't know that your feelings are always based on love.
Thank you for listening. I hope you found some value in this episode. If you have, be sure to share the Akkeri Podcast with a friend and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can find the Akkeri on socials at The Akkeri and on the web at theakkeri.com. You can find Ron, his blog, and his books on his website at midlandspsychological.com. When the new book Balls is released, it will also be on their website as well as amazon.com. And you can find all the links I've mentioned in the show notes for this episode.